Bibles out, we're going to look at the book of Luke. Tonight we're going to look at the miracles in the book of Luke. Just a few facts. Everybody's got to look at the facts. I've been working on stuff today, some databases of information. I've just had number after number after number today, so my eyes were about crossways. But I did some quick things on this. I started to bring a pie chart in. Y'all know what the pie chart is, and illustrate, and I thought that's just a waste of time right there, so I didn't do it. But 105 verses in the book of Luke that deals with the miracles. And in that there are 13 miracles that are talked about specifically. Now there's the verse in Scripture that says he healed many and those type of things. But as far as actual direct verses that deal with a specific instance, there's 13 of them. 4 of them was internal sickness, 2 of them was leprosy, 2 of them was paralyzed, 2 of them were deformed, 2 were dead, and 1 was blind. Now, is that all the miracles that Jesus performed? No. Guarantee if we were starting to look at the other Bibles, Matthew and Mark and John, we'd see entirely different miracles that's maybe not even mentioned in the book of Luke. It's just a sample. All it is a sample of the miracles performed. And probably if we were to look at the other Bibles, books of the Bible like we're going to do tonight with this one, probably the messages would probably be somewhat the same. Might be a few differences, but I would say that probably it would be about the same. If I took the book of John, I'd probably come up with just about the same lesson, I would say. Now, throwing those facts out there, let's just sort of get us warmed up. 3 numbers I want you to think about. 3, 4, and 5. Because that's going to go through our points tonight. And I just want to lay that out there. We're going to talk about 3 audiences. We're going to talk about 4 purposes. And we're going to talk about 5 lessons that are coming out of these miracles that's performed in the book of Luke. Now, like I said, it's just a sample. Doesn't include all of them. But the question we've got to ask ourselves, and remember we've done this on the other ones, why? Why did Jesus perform these miracles, the ones that he talks about them specifically, and why were they included in the book of Luke for us to have today, some 2,000 years later? Because there's got to be some significance. We already established he healed many different people. So there's all kinds of examples he could have chose from, but we get these 13. And there's got to be a reason why we are given these 13. The first number was what? Y'all remember? 3. There's 3 audiences. When you look at the miracles that occur, there's 3 audiences. Who are those 3 audience members? Anybody want to take a stab? Okay. I'll expand that just a little bit. There are the people that were in the setting, in the room, or wherever he was at the time that miracle was performed. That is one of the audiences. Now you're forgetting, or you're not thinking about the most obvious audience member. The one that's healed, exactly, the beneficiary, And in some cases, the beneficiary never even lays eyes on Jesus. He doesn't know who Jesus is, and probably in a couple cases, he had no idea why, or she had no idea why he miraculously became healed, but all of a sudden, they're whole without any idea. Who is the third audience? That'd be us, exactly. Us today. And because of that, we got to keep in mind, there was probably 3 different messages. There was a message that the beneficiary received. Their whole attention span would have been revolving around what? That they're healed. They probably didn't think about much more. There's an example of the man with the shriveled hand. Now, I've always taken it, a small hand or whatever. I mean, when you think shriveled, what else do you think about? And all of a sudden, his hand grows into a fully formed hand. He was thinking about that hand. That's all in the world is going through. Now he's thinking, man, I can go buy 2 regular gloves and wear 2 regular gloves. Or if it was the left hand, he's thinking, I can finally put a catcher's mitt on and catch a baseball. I mean, all of a sudden, that happened. So that more than likely the one that was the beneficiary was just thinking about today. Now the audience members, the ones in attendance, what do you think they were thinking about? Huh? Wow, how did he do that? Now that's on some of the cases. What are some of the other people in the audience thinking? Well, probably did. But if you think about it, and we're going to talk about it tonight specifically, there were some of the audience members that looked at it and said, how dare he do that? How dare he do that? They got mad over it. So that's a lesson we'll look at. So the three different audiences. What was the second number? 4. 4 purposes for the miracles. And we'll run through these because they are fairly obvious. What would be the first obvious illustration? Somebody turn to Luke chapter 4, verses 38 through 44. We're going to read it. Who wants to read Luke 4, verses 38 through 44?
Jesus left the synagogue and went to the home of Simon. Now Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked Jesus to help her. So he bent over her and rebuked the fever and left her. She got up at once and began to wait on him. When the sun was setting, the people brought to Jesus all who had various kinds of sickness, and laying his hands on each one, he healed them. Moreover, demons came out of many people shouting, "You are the Son of God." But he rebuked them and would not allow them to speak, because they knew he was the Christ. At daybreak, Jesus went out to a solitary place. The people were looking for him, and when they came to where he was, they tried to keep him from leaving them. But he said, "I must preach the good news of the kingdom of God to the other towns also, because this is why I am sent." And he kept on preaching in the synagogue of Judea.
All right. So the first illustration, Peter's mother-in-law, she's got a fever. He heals her. She gets up and gets back to work. All well and good. By sunset, what has happened? The word has spread. You're not a kid. And they were bringing them right and left by the cartload. They was probably carrying them down the road. People hobbling. You can imagine flocks and flocks of people coming and being brought to that house because word had already spread that, hey, he healed somebody that was sick. And we want that. We want to be healed as well. It got so bad by the next day, they tried to keep him from leaving them. They didn't want him to even leave. They were really thinking, man, we got more people to bring. We got more people who need to be healed. So the first purpose of a miracle is one that I think is the obvious one. It was designed to do what? Create a following. It was to create a following. And it did, didn't it? I mean, anytime Jesus performed miracles, it caused groups of people to follow him. And when those people started following, what did he do? He gets them in there, and I hate to use the term, when he baits them in with using the miracles, then what's he do? He teaches them. Exactly. He preaches. He lets them know exactly what it is that they need to know. So, the first purpose is to build a following. Second purpose. Somebody read Luke 7, verses 1 through 10. Who wants that? Now, we're going to read some tonight, so you might as well get ready. Luke 7, verses 1 through 10. All right.
1 through 10. All right. When Jesus had finished saying all this, in the hearing of the people, he had heard there a centurion's servant, whom his master valued highly, was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him, "This man deserves to have you do this." Have you to do this. Because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue. So Jesus went with them. He was not far from the house when the centurion sent friends to say to him, "Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That is why I do not even consider myself worthy to come to you. But say your word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority,
Okay. Whenever we look at this story, Comer, every time we've ever preached a sermon or heard a sermon about this story, we always concentrate on who in this story. Who? Well, Christ is always the center, but we always talk about what? That centurion servant, and what about him? His great faith. He said, listen, I'm not worthy you come in my house. Just say the word and it'll happen. What is significant about this miracle? What makes it stand out? What makes it different? He never went there. What does that teach us? What did it teach the people in that day and time? Huh? Ever present, ever knowing, all powerful. This miracle right here teaches the crowds, and it teaches us today the power of God. It tells those people in that day and time and tells us today, God is not constrained by location. We don't know how far away the centurion servants was. It may have been a mile down the road, may have been 10 miles down the road. He could have been 1,000 miles down the road. It did not matter. Exactly.
And we'll be demonstrating what Christianity is all about.
The stronger, I don't mean to cut you off there, but the stronger we get, the more we understand the power that God has and the ability to know that He is not constrained. You know, think about it in that day and time. Probably the biggest thing to come out of that, you know, people said, listen, he didn't even have to go to Him. He was healed. He was a long way away. That's power right there. You know, we think about Jesus, and everybody bringing to Him, they always want Jesus to do what? I mean, if you had a sickness, you wanted Jesus to come and touch you, didn't you? He's showing to these people and to us today the true power that God has. You know, you think how that ties together. I was thinking about the other verse. You know, we think about always a matter of location and where we're at and the physical contact. He tells the woman at the well, you know, you worship on this mountain, we worship on Jerusalem. There's going to be a day when you worship in neither places. You're going to worship everywhere. And that goes right along with it. He's talking about the power that God has through this and the power that God has given Him in these miracles. No, go ahead.
But when you speak it on me, I said, listen, there's a couple things come to mind. The Hebrew writer said, for without faith, it is impossible to please God. He that cometh to God must believe that He is God, and that He's a rewarder of them that diligently seek Him. So, if we don't have faith in God, you know, there's just no way. He said, you can't be pleasing to Almighty God without faith. Well, these folks had faith. You know, we walk by faith and not by sight.
Good point right there, because it's all about that believing in and understanding who God is and what He has the capable to do. You know, today, do we see God today? No, we can't see Him with our eyes. We can't see Jesus. We know He's on the right-hand throne of God, and we're told in the Bible, where 2 or 3 are gathered together, I'm in your presence. We're 2 or 3 together. Do you see Him here? I mean, with your physical eyes, are we able to see Him? No. I mean, He's teaching right here. Even though we can't see and we can't understand, that doesn't mean that He's not at work and at power in power today.
Everybody see this morning when they got up. His son. Who put that son up there? God. That's His creation. And this morning it was a little cooler than it is this afternoon. How come that we're not just one air conditioner for the whole world? God didn't make that.
That's right. Mhm.
And if we, go through life, you know, we'll be thankful for those things.
Exactly.
The fishermen, the rivers, the oceans to fish in, the hunters, the wood, and, those that gone for the golf course.
There you go. Amen.
I believe he covered us all.
He got us all right there. Somebody look, this will be the third purpose of the miracle. Somebody read Luke 5, verses 17 through 26. Who wants to read that? Luke 5, verses 17 through 26.
And it came to pass on a certain day, as he was teaching, that there were Pharisees and doctors of the law sitting by, which were come out of every town of Galilee, and Judea and Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was present to heal them. And behold, men brought in a bed a man which was taken with palsy, and they sought means to bring him in, and lay him before him. And when they could not find by what way they might bring him in because of the multitude, they went upon the housetop and let him down through the tiling with his couch into the midst before Jesus. And when he saw their faith, he said unto them, Man, thy sins are forgiven. And the scribes and the Pharisees began to reason, saying, Who is this which speaketh blasphemy? Who can forgive sins but God alone? And when Jesus perceived their thoughts, he answered and said unto them, What reason ye in your hearts? Whether it is easier to say, Thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, Rise up and walk. But that ye may know that the Son of Man hath power upon earth to forgive sins, he said unto the sick of the palsy, I say unto thee, Arise, and take up thy couch, and go into thine house. And immediately he arose up before them, and took up that whereon he lay, and departed to his own house, glorifying God. And they were all amazed, and glorified God, and were filled with fear, saying, We have seen strange things today.
All right. The third reason, third purpose for miracles is for Jesus to prove his deity. Now, when we look at this miracle and this story, every time we look at it and we talk about it, one thing is always mentioned and talked about time and time again, and that is what? His friends did what? Led him down through the roof. And we're all amazed by the fact that his friends loved him so much that they took him up, opened up the roof, and they lowered him down just so he could meet with Jesus. That wasn't the purpose of that miracle. It's part of it. Purpose is what? When he walks up to that man laying on that mat, he says what? Your sins are forgiven you. He did that not for necessarily, I mean, the beneficiary of it is laying right there, but he said it for whose purpose? The Pharisee sitting in that room. And the important, and Darrell, I appreciate you, I think you got the King James Version right there. Luke in the NIV says, But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. Whole purpose of that miracle is for him to stand and face that Pharisee and say, I'm deity. I've got the ability to forgive this man's sins. I got forgiveness. I've got the ability to forgive everybody's sins. On earth, in heaven, it don't matter where. I've got that power. So, and that leads us up to the last one. And we don't really have a verse to read for it. And that'll give us to number 5, because we're going to look at 5 quick points. Not only does it tell us that it builds a following for Jesus, and that it shows the power of God, and it shows and proves Jesus' deity, the miracles teach us today what not to be. And I want to illustrate that, and that's where I got my 5. That's my 5, George. I've got 5 points for us to look at. Point number 1, who were we just talking about that was in that room that Jesus was sending that message to? The Pharisees. Question for you. My father-in-law asked me this question one time. I had to do some research and study, and I don't still think I gave him a correct answer. Are there still Pharisees today? In the strict sense, the Jewish sense?
Not necessarily that. There's some pretty strict interpretations of the law.
I think so. Now, the Pharisees were a sect, and you could say there are some that's probably just as strict as they were and do some of the same things. I don't know for sure technically Pharisees exist. Are there Pharisees that are not of the Jewish religion in a sense? When we think of the term Pharisee, what do we say? If I compared George to a Pharisee, what am I saying about him? All right. What else? How else would you say that?
You're justified by your own righteousness.
They believe they're justified by their faith, or by their works. They try to the best of their ability to follow every minute detail and everything they can. You know, a Pharisee, and I don't want to get into history stuff, you go back and look at the history of the Pharisees in Jesus' time, they didn't work. They spent their whole day and night trying to follow the prescribes of the law of Moses. That was their job. They tried their best, and they couldn't live up to it. So if we're looking at George today, we're calling him a Pharisee, we're saying what? You're just trying to work out your own salvation, and you follow the strict interpretation of the law. Anything else? What else could you say if we were accusing him of being a Pharisee? That's a good one right there. I hadn't even thought about that. Doing things to be seen. They want to appear to be righteous.
Like Brother Fred said, legalistic, very legalistic.
Very legalistic.
Legalistic to the point of missing the point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Of what they're doing. We got some church that way.
Really?
Jesus told us what the Pharisee was in Luke 12. He tells us, beware ye of the leaven of the Pharisees,
Yeah.
which is hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
And hypocrisy is play acting.
Mm-hmm.
You're holding yourself above and beyond what you truly are in your heart.
Yeah.
That's a pretty tough.
Was the Pharisee humble?
Yes, to the people in one aspect, yes they were. And their humility was though in the fact that they could portray the full knowledge of the law and how it came and
Yeah.
see. That's what a humility was to them. But in the humility is the broken and contrite heart that came about that he portrayed to them. No. Absolutely.
Amen, that's right.
Lord, thank you that I am not like this man, this sinner.
Yeah.
You know, that's the impression we've got of it. You go back to Luke 13, and I don't really want us to have to go and read that verse. We've read it quite a bit. Luke 13 is one of the miracles there that are performed. In that verse, one of those verses, it says the Pharisees became indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath. Indignant. And what does the word indignant mean? Huh? It was very angry. Just could not believe how dare they do that. That was, don't they know we've written these books what you can do and can't do on the Sabbath? And he just goes and does whatever he wants. Doesn't he know who's in control? Doesn't he know who's the boss? I mean, basically, is that not what they're saying when they say he's indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath?
And I'm convinced he smiled a lot when he did. I'm fully, because that drove it even harder against him. Hey, doesn't it happen to us? When somebody takes joy in doing something, and it's against everything that just,
Yeah.
and I'm convinced, I believe he had a smile on his face because he knew the grace he's fixing to impart. The glory of God is going to manifest in front of him. And then he turns, they're blind.
Yeah.
They can't hear, they can't see.
Two quick points. First of all, the Pharisees, the miracles are not the only time that is addressed about their way of thinking and his way of thinking and the comparison. And in anything, in any great story, you have to have a comparison, don't you? You always have the good guy and the bad guy. You always have the right and the left. You always have that person to illustrate who the righteous person is. And Jesus uses them all throughout the Bible. The Pharisees, he uses them to teach us what not to be.
Amen.
How not to live. One other point that goes along with it as a side note too, you have to understand, those things he did, when they would get indignant, a lot of times it would say, they started plotting, how do we stop him? How do we stop him? And like it or not, and it's hard for us to understand, through some of these miracles, and primarily through the miracles he performed, he was building up the anger in them that they would bring about the cross of Calvary. You know, I don't want to make it sound like he was prodding them. They had their beliefs ingrained, and they reacted the way they reacted. But he did what he did, and it all built up and built the momentum that brought about the cross and brought about our salvation. Because if they didn't get indignant, he would never had, there would have been no reason for him to ever go. That's hard for us to understand how those things play out. But it's just, you know, that's God's design. It's not, some things are not for us to understand. It's just the way things are. Second lesson, I think, when you look at what he's saying for us not to become.
Mark, one thing you do,
No, go.
we need to keep in mind, the glory of God and the power of God has been silent for over 400 years now. So this has all had time to really get momentum and all that. You know, I have a hard time trying to get my mind around just how much you can get ingrained in tradition, and you try to, because we have Spirit God on, you know what I mean? And he's prodding us and checking us and twisting us around so we don't get caught in this mode again. And I just can't imagine 430 years of just the pullback of God, per se, to allow them to drive themselves to this point. And that's always a warning for us in walking with the Lord today. And that's, you know, we're warned about that all the time, is draw nigh unto Him and consciously evaluate ourselves in our walk and what our motives are and everything that's going on. So I find when I'm being drove in that state, most times, you know, it's all about me. I'm up to something. Now I just got to figure out what it is because I'm off base.
And that's a good point. I'm glad that you brought that up. In our spiritual lives, we have to really, from time to time, that's the reason why, you know, when we meet around the Lord's table, we're told to do what? Examine ourselves. You know, we're told to test ourselves. You know, and that's, we've got to do that from time to time and see, are we still headed on the right track? Are we headed down the wrong path? Now, there's people, when you get headed down that wrong path, it's hard to turn around. It's hard to turn around when you head down the wrong path of drugs and alcohol and all those sinful things along that line. It's also hard to turn around when you head down that legalistic path of lightening up and realizing, hey, I'm adding to. The old phrase, you don't add to or take away from the Bible. There's sometimes that, you know, it becomes hard once you travel down that path of saying, I've been too strict. I'm holding people at a too high a standard. I'm holding myself at too high of a standard. It's hard to change those wheels in that direction. Let's read one more. Luke 5, verses 12 through 16. Who wants to read that? Luke 5, verses 12 through 16. All right.
Okay, while Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was covered with leprosy. When he saw Jesus, he fell on his face to the ground and begged him, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. I am willing, he said, be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him. Then Jesus ordered him, don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the sacrifices that Moses commanded for your cleansing, as a testimony to them. Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed.
Okay. The story of the leper, it always stands out to me. Now, in that day and time, leprosy was a serious, serious issue. It's something, you know, does leprosy still exist today? Yes. Yeah. What do you have? And I'm going to get on, here's your trivial knowledge. Shay, let's see if you know your trivial knowledge. Because I'm going to say I may have seen one of these in White County this week. What animal carries leprosy? The armadillos. And I'll be honest, I was on 111, and I think I saw a dead armadillo.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen any, that's
I've
first,
seen two or three.
have you?
Yeah.
Okay. But they say you're not supposed to handle them. Now, who's gonna handle it?
Really?
Alive or dead armadillo? I don't think anybody's fool enough to do that, but they supposedly carry leprosy, and you have to be very careful about it. So that's your trivial fact for the day. Fred, take that for what it's worth. If you can make money off of it, feel free to.
Just send your
It may be tough.
It may be tough. All right. But in that day and time, if you had leprosy, what was it like? It was a death sentence. It was a death sentence from a physical standpoint, but it was also a death sentence from a social standpoint.
You had to, let everybody know you were unclean,
Yeah.
and it was only a high priest that could clarify that you had been healed of it or whatever. I mean, he had to be the one to let everybody know. So that's why the Lord told him to go and show himself, you know. They had it bad going and coming. Not only were they dealing, like you said, physically with sickness, but nobody wanted nothing.
Nothing to do. Now, we talked a few minutes ago about the story of the centurion servant and the fact that Jesus wasn't even near the person healed. What's the significance of this passage of Scripture? He touched him.
That's right.
Probably the first physical touch he'd had in some time, unless another leper had, for whatever reason, touched him. I mean, that stands out. That's significant. What does it tell us? What does that tell us? When Jesus is performing that miracle, what does that tell us? You know, too often we get sidetracked on one thing or the other. And we worry about the spiritual. Man, I'm worried about your soul. Boy, I want to see you go to heaven and everything. There's a physical side too. And we cannot separate those two. You can't separate and see somebody in need and really help them here on this earth in the physical matters. If you don't do that, you're never going to reach them spiritually. And the two things go hand in hand. The lesson for us to realize, in that day and time, it was so easy for the people just to ignore them and go their separate ways. Jesus tells us what? You got to have empathy for people.
That's right.
You got to be able to look at them and understand what their needs are. That takes talent. Let's just be honest. There's people that comes in, and I'm going to go back, and I don't want to name names. Some of you are going to know exactly what I'm talking about, because I never forget a fella that told me this, and I never really thought about it until he said it. And he and his wife tried to help somebody. And he said, you know, I realized after the fact, it was so difficult helping this person that it come between the husband and wife, and they're not married today. And there's other contributing factors. But he always has made that point. You know, it all started, we were trying to help this person, and you know, they were so in need, and it was so hard to help. And you know, let's just be honest, there's some people in need, they're a handful to help. It's hard to help them.
That's true.
They have so many needs, and they don't understand, and they can't seem to ever get things straightened out. You get them one step forward and they take 2 steps back the next day. We've got to understand, we've got to be able to look. You know, I as a Christian, I can't, what is the phrase, cookie cutter everything. I can't, there's not templates for everything. When I look at Miss Downs, I've got to look at Miss Downs, I've got to try and figure out, what does she need as a Christian? How can I help her? What is she going through? And when I go over here to Comer, entirely different situation, entirely different person. And I've got to look at him, and I've got to figure out, what does Comer need? What can I do to help Comer?
Because it's not the same. It could vary so much physically or spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I don't mean to.
No, go ahead.
The thing is, Jesus knew that the great multitude that was following him, the only way that some might be able to hear him, it's hard to teach somebody on the empty stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And he fed. Now, not all of them hung around for the sermon, but he took care of their immediate need, the physical need,
Mm-hmm.
in order to get into the spiritual need.
And you know, pictures too, and I think Christ would support what I'm about to say. You know, things change, life changes. Life is not the same today as it was 20 years ago. You know, a lot of people say, well, why don't y'all have gospel meetings? You know, have we ever had a gospel meeting here, George?
Too long to think about.
Now, if these two right here cannot remember a gospel meeting, we've not had a gospel meeting. You know, a lot of churches still try that. Does it work? No. I'm going to tell you, and this, y'all are going to look at me like I'm nuts, but doing research and doing stuff that we're seeing through work and those type of things, the best avenue probably right now, that we can do about getting the message out and spreading the word of Christ is work. That's one part of it. Facebook, YouTube, those type of things. It is unreal. We got to doing things where we put advertisements on Facebook, and it comes back. You know, the amount of hits those things get is just phenomenal, and you're able to go back and track and see where those people are at and those type of things. It has a reach. Everybody is Facebooking anymore, and they see those messages. And I'm gonna tell you, we've got some. Butch, you're one of them. Richard does it. A lot of this in this congregation are all the time posting on Facebook, and every time I open up my computer, my laptop, it don't matter during the day, I'm seeing another post by Darrell Turney or by Mark Ledford or somebody. And in every point throughout that day, I may be in the middle of something, sitting across from a group of mayors, thinking about sewer lines somewhere, Dillard, and I open up my laptop or my iPad to try and find out where a map is, and lo and behold, Mark Ledford has posted this. And throughout that day, what does that force me to do? Huh? Well, I usually don't look right away because I got mayors sitting right in front of me. They're not going to understand me being on Facebook. They're not going to understand that. But even in an instant, what has my mind done in an instant? Thought about Cumberland Heights Church of Christ.
That's right.
My mind has been brought back to that. Now, will that always be the case? No. We live in a changing world, and we as a church, we have to learn how to adapt and move. And I think that's what we've got to realize here. You know, that's a stretch, this first scripture. Homer, I understand, that's a stretch. But the point of it is, we have to be able to use our minds and think about that person we're dealing with. How do we reach them? How do we touch them? And it is very significant.
And then think about how long it's going to touch, because I believe when Paul writes Romans later, and it comes, and you think this individual right here, I would assume he's still living, and he gets to, as we call it today, chapter 8, it says, therefore now no condemnation. You want to talk about a man that jumps for joy and runs around, and just, he gets it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's right.
So that one message, that one touch is reaching 30, 40, 50 years of time. It's not locked into today.
Mm-hmm.
Just to go along with what you're saying.
All right, third point, which goes sort of hand in hand with the previous one right there, and there's really not a verse of scripture. There's 2 or 3 we can reference back to. The friends letting down through the roof, the centurion servant, any of these illustrations right there, they show us what? That we cannot detach ourselves from the needs of others. There are two people that are healed. Why? The only reason they're healed for one reason. Somebody else said, we're not going to let him go another minute. I'm going to get him help. I'm going to do something. I'm going to make a difference. That centurion servant's, he's sick there, and that centurion soldier, he does what? I'm going to Jesus. I've heard he's healing. I love this guy. He's dear to me. I don't want him to die. I'm going to go get him help. Those friends, they get there and they couldn't go in. I mean, now Shay, if I'm hosting Jesus at my house and you can't get in my front door, before you take the roof off, get my attention, we'll make room to come through the front door. Yeah, there you go. But, yeah, There you go. But think about that. When you go up on that roof, you start taking the tiles off, what are you saying? I'm not taking no for an answer. We're not leaving here till my friend sees Jesus. Now, there's some people in this world who got up to that door carrying that cart and they said, well, there's no more room. And they done what? Yeah, they would have.
Who was it, Brother Markson, like we read recently, I can't remember in my mind, the example of the, woman that went before the judge and pleaded and pleaded and pleaded and pleaded. And he wasn't even a godly man. But this woman's about to drive me crazy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we need, just talk about people that don't know how to take no for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Serving God and living for God, we ought not take no for an answer.
Exactly.
You know, if there's a roof in the way,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the Lord said, "If there's a mountain in your way, say to that man, if you got faith, say to that man, get out of my way. I'm coming," you know.
Now, Terry, I'm going to put you on the spot right there. What's it take for you to think, I'm going to carry my friend to this house, and if I can't get in the front door, I'm going to get up on the roof, I'm going to take the roof off, and I'm going to let them down through? What does it take to get you to that point? Were you willing to do that? That person laying on that mat, what do you got to think about?
You know, a lot of people, you want to help them, no matter what the cost.
And you got to love them. That's love right there. We talk about how do you illustrate love? That's love right there, isn't it?
If we could just get him in there, so if he could be seen, things will happen.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's faith.
You gotta have a lot of faith too. I mean, you know, that's not an easy job to take the roof apart. So you gotta believe this is going to get better.
No. I'm going to disagree with you. It's always easy to take apart. The hard part is putting it back together. That's always difficult. Listen, I got pry bars. We can take that roof off and no problem. Chainsaw, you name it.
Yeah, but you know what, and I say this, I try to say this with a little humor, but if we did that in some of our brethren's house, and we didn't get it back right, they'd sue us.
Oh, now listen, don't talk about Richard like that.
Oh,
No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't want to bring it up, Mark, but
I couldn't resist, Richard. I'm sorry, you forgive me once. All right, I got 2 more points. I want to get these finished up. Somebody look very short one. Luke 8 verses 49 through 50. Who wants that? And let me go ahead and give out one more. Luke 17 verses 11 through 19. So the first one's Luke 8, 49 through 50. Who wants to get that one? All right, Ms. Dale. The second one, Luke 17 verses 11 through 19. Who wants that one? You can go ahead and be ready to go. You got that again, Darryl? Okay. All right. Now, keep in mind before you read, this is one of those illustrations. Child has died, and they're going. So, pick up from there.
While Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler. Your daughter is dead, he said. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, don't be afraid, just believe and she will be healed.
Okay. The lesson for us out of this illustration right here, do not give up hope. The key phrase in that what she just read right there. Jesus looks, and you can almost picture, you have to work with it. You can almost picture Jesus getting that man and holding his face and looking at him and saying what? Don't be afraid. Just believe and she'll be healed. Just trust me. Trust me. I'm going to take care of it. That's the message right there. Don't give up hope. We talk about a lot of things. Talk about being persistent and those type of things. The message for us is do not give up hope. What rips our hope apart? What rips away the hope that we have? What happens? How do we lose hope? Huh? Setbacks? Okay. All right, let's go. You've had some cases. There was another one today with a man, and I think 3 kids got lost out on a sailboat. You remember that's happened a few months ago. You had 2 teenage boys that lost. You know, they had hope. You know, the parents, no doubt, the first day, they had hope. Second day, they had hope. They had hope. What started causing their hope to leave? Time, and what else? What else happened, do you think? How many family members started coming up? It's okay. It's okay. But they're not coming home. And others start giving up hope. And the more and more people give up hope, what do? Our hope starts what? Starts dwindling. When life gets us down and starts kicking, that Butch, you ought to be an expert at this. Seems like life gets you down and starts kicking. You know, what picks you up when you go down? It's those arms around you, it's those comforting words and those type of things. But it seems like sometimes when life gets you down and it's kicking you, it seems like you're all alone, doesn't it? And when you're all alone, it's hard to maintain that hope.
I can muster strength, seem like if I get around some of y'all. And I can muster strength from God, don't get me wrong. But there's a reason why that there's a word called fellowship. And encouragement and love. Because I'm gonna tell you something. I just don't think by my God, I go through his grace, but I wouldn't be as strong today if it wasn't for my brothers and sisters.
I think personal contact is very important.
Yes.
So the more we lift each other up, the more we support each other, the more we have hope, the stronger all of us are going to be. Really not. I mean, it had to be tough. Man, he gets told, your daughter's dead. One guy's over here going, she's dead. And Jesus is going, hold on, I'm going to make her live. And he's probably going back and forth. And they're going, no, listen, Jesus, she's dead. Don't, she's dead. Don't trust her. She's dead. And Jesus is like, trust me. I'm going to heal her. Trust me. It's hard. That's the way life is sometimes. We see things going on and we're torn. I think my wife was giving me the... Oh, boy. But it's hard sometimes. Last point. Let's be quick on that. Darrell, read us that last point right there. Luke 17, verses 11 through 19.
And it came to pass, as he went to Jerusalem, that he passed through the midst of Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered into a certain village, there met him 10 men that were lepers, which stood afar off. And they lifted up their voices and said, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. And when he saw them, he said unto them, Go show yourselves unto the priest. And it came to pass, and as they went, they were clean. And one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back and with a loud voice glorified God, and fell down on his face at his feet, giving him thanks. And he was a Samaritan. And Jesus answered and said, Were there not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? There are not found that return to give glory to God, save this stranger. And he said unto him, Arise, go thy way, thy faith hath made thee whole.
Okay. The last lesson Jesus tells us not to be is what? Ungrateful. And how often, when you think about how much that God has done for us, how often are we ungrateful? We take it for granted. We become expecting it. And when things happen to us good, we don't thank him for it. All right. I'm going to end.
First thing we do is blame him.
Yeah, that's right. All right. I'm going to end right there unless anybody has any other comments.